Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm glad that you're here. Today we're going to talk about a story that initially concerned me back around January 6th, but it got kind of lost in all the drama and chaos, that was Trump. Barry Loudermilk and his outrage that he would be accused of doing something he was doing. So grab a cuppa and I'll see you in a minute.
I intend to see that those members of Congress who embedded him, those members of Congress who had groups coming through the Capitol that I saw on January 5th, a reconnaissance for the next day, those members of Congress that incited this violent crowd, those members of Congress that attempted to help our president undermine our democracy. I'm going to see that they're held accountable, and if necessary, ensure that they don't serve in Congress.
In light of the discovery of the neo-Nazi white nationalist 9-page memo titled 1776 Returns that laid out detailed plans to occupy congressional office buildings to stop Congress from certifying a democratic election, what we already know and what we are yet to learn about these so-called militia groups, it makes this a kind of a compelling story. So in the days after the insurrection, New Jersey Representative Mikey Sherrill and some other members of Congress claimed that they had witnessed unusual tours occurring the day before the insurrection. Tours being led by some Republican lawmakers, ushering groups of people around the Capitol complex, people wearing MAGA hats and taking pictures in unusual locations. What made this stand out in the minds of those Congress members in light of the insurrection was that tours were banned at the time due to COVID measures. And the only people in the Capitol that day should have been members of Congress and their staff, reporters, U.S. Capitol Police, and official business visitors. So Mikey Sherrill, along with other Congress members, requested investigations by the Office of the Sergeant at Arms, as well as the Capitol Police. And in May of 2021, a group of House Republicans filed an ethics complaint against Sherrill and those other Democrats who made these quote-unquote unsubstantiated claims that GOP members led reconnaissance tours before the January 6th insurrection. So the ethics complaint was sent by the top Republicans on the House Administration Committee, Illinois Representative Rodney Davis, and the subject of our video, Georgia Representative Barry Loudermilk, and you can't even make this stuff up. The complaint was announced by Mr. Loudermilk because, of course, and he stated that Sherrill and these other House Democrats had no evidence for suggesting that GOP lawmakers had brought people into the Capitol a day before the insurrection. He said, "My Republican colleagues and I will not sit by while Democrats accuse their colleagues of treason for political gain. This type of conduct must not be tolerated, and the Committee on Ethics needs to take quick and decisive action to ensure this never happens again." Now, he's not talking about the insurrection. He's talking about Mikey Sherrill questioning what she had seen. Let's just be straight on that one. So you've guessed it by now, I'm sure. Not only was Mr. Loudermilk wrong, as it turns out, he knew he was wrong because he was one of the people giving tours. As it turns out, he wasn't wrong. He was lying. Not only was he lying, he was feigning false outrage that a member of the GOP could be accused of such a thing. He sought to impose an ethics complaint against another member of Congress for telling the truth. She was telling the truth. And as the screws tighten around this guy, his lies change with each new tidbit of news that gets uncovered. Okay, he wasn't giving a tour. There were no tours. There were no MAGA hats. And then, oh yeah, there wasn't a tour. He was hosting a family and just showing them around. Then he was hosting a family and a few other people. He took them to locations in the Capitol complex because the Capitol was closed, he said. But the Capitol complex was closed too. He was in places where tours don't go because he was showing them a train. But they didn't take pictures of a train. They took pictures of hallways and tunnels and stairways. Oh, he has an excuse for one of the stairway pictures. They took pictures of the stairway because there's a wall sconce that was, fabulous? And just listening to the guy that took the pictures and wound up at the Capitol the next day during the insurrection, filming himself, kind of makes me suspect that he isn't a home decor kind of guy.
It has begun here at the Washington Monument, Washington, D.C. Say hello to Facebook.
Hey, what's going on, man? Glad to be here, bro.
This is our fearless leader.
Hey, baby. Check out my flag I made, guys. You see it? There you go, baby. That's for a certain person.
That's right. That's for somebody special. Somebody special. All right. We are basically at the Capitol with probably close to 2 million true American patriots. They are swarming and converging mainly from Constitution Avenue, but from all routes in. There's no escape, Pelosi, Schumer, Nadler. We're coming for you. We're coming in like white on rice for Pelosi, Nadler, Schumer, even you, AOC. We're coming to take you out. We'll pull you out by your hairs. How about that, Pelosi? Might as well make yourself another appointment. I'll get done with you. You're gonna need a sign up on top of that bald head.
Oh yeah, that guy talking, the charming fella threatening to take Jerry Nadler, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and AOC out, was the same budding photographer the day before taking those tourist pictures of stairways and walls, and pictures of the door signs of one of the people he was going to go after the next day and take him out. That's not terrifying. And he was there with another person he called the fearless leader. Were they traveling together? The guy who had weaponized his American flag by turning it into a DIY spear? Because, of course he did. They photographed and recorded areas of the complex not typically of interest to tourists. According to almost everyone that's seen these pictures that's actually worked in those buildings. And Mr. Congeniality there, threatening to take out members of Congress, traveled to Washington on January 4th, and he departed from Georgia in the early morning on one of those Keep America Great buses, made a short stop in South Carolina, and then it continued on to Washington, D.C. And once there, he was hosted by Mr. Loudermilk, who had been insisting that there were no tours, and how dare anyone suggest there were. They should get ethics committee violations for suggesting that any member of Congress would give a tour when it was him. Well, at least he was one of the people. And this bozo, Mr. Photographer there, recording himself in the basement rotunda of the Cannon around 1 p.m. on the 5th. According to a Facebook Live video that he posted that we haven't seen yet. He, along with other people in Loudermilk's group, attended the Save America rally that took place the next day at the Ellipse, where Trump spoke and urged his supporters to march on the Capitol. And he joined the march, doing investigators a great favor, by the way, by not only not wearing his mask properly while he was in the Capitol complex, because you could see his entire face, but posting his nonsense on Facebook Live. And prior to this, committee Republicans insisted that they had reviewed the January 5th security footage, and it had shown there were no tours, no groups of any size, no one with MAGA hats on. How dare we suggest that there were? Stay tuned for what they say now. God only knows. And Loudermilk, who sits on the Committee on House Administration, he issued a joint statement with Representative Rodney Davis, the ranking member of the committee. Now that the surveillance video footage has been released, now they're saying a constituent family with young children meeting with their member of Congress in the House office buildings is not a suspicious group or reconnaissance tour. The family never entered the Capitol building, Loudermilk says. See, these semantics are what really annoy me, because no one suggested that Loudermilk took these people into the Capitol building. He's attempting to create a straw man fallacy, and he's about as good at it as he is at lying. There were no really young children in that group, and it wasn't just a family. It was a group of at least 10 people, some of which had joined him from a bus that came from Georgia, South Carolina. I don't think it's a good idea for anyone to believe anything that Loudermilk says. Like Trump, truth doesn't seem to be a concept these guys are burdened with.
Hey, Congressman, can you have a quick moment for us, sir?
Sure.
So I know you sent out a statement about January 6th committee. Why won't you meet with them if you say your video was not suspicious?
They've never sent me a letter asking me, never called me. They send it to you guys. So if they were interested in the truth, they had a year and 4 months to call me and talk. I would have been glad to talk to them about it because there's nothing there.
But can you explain who you were giving a tour to that day?
Well, it was a family and some guests of folks that they brought from Georgia.
Do you know?
So the committee has written Loudermilk 2 letters, they say, asking him to answer questions on the record about the tour. But his office tells us the letters were not sent to him directly, and therefore they have nothing to respond to. And he just said they sent the letters to the press. He plays with words, and I don't trust him.
Know who that man was in the video?
I don't know him. I've never met him before.
But he was on that tour with you.
I don't
on the
know. I
5th.
never saw the guy on the video. My understanding is the guy taking the video is what they're saying.
Right, that's my understanding.
Right. So I don't even see him on there. So I don't know. I'm assuming that they say it's him.
Was the voice?
So this raises a couple questions. If this was all one family, did they all take a bus from Georgia or South Carolina to participate in the insurrection? He's saying it was a family. It was quite a large group, if that's so. Investigators have pinpointed this man specifically. When he got on the bus, they didn't say he had any connection to the rest of the people that were taking these tours. And so Mr. Loudermilk does not clear up any of the confusion that he's created by first insisting that there were no tours. How dare people suggest there were, knowing that he had given this tour, and then suggesting there was nobody wearing MAGA hats, it was just a family. Then they added a couple people. He just serves to further confuse the situation.
Is recognizable to you?
No, because I mean that was a year and 4 months ago, and it was most of the people that come to our office. You guys know this. We don't. They're constituents. You don't know them. They've never been around. And to us, the 5th was just another day.
In the video, it clearly shows an individual taking photos of a security checkpoint in the basement that leads to the Capitol.
What they were taking a picture of is I took the family, and of course the other folks were with them, have 2 young kids that wanted to see the little trains that take congressmen. So I took them to show them where the trolley was in the Raven Tunnel.
But why do you think pictures were being taken of a stairwell, around security?
If you go to that stairwell, there's a golden eagle sconce that's on the wall. That's what I was taking a picture of. I mean,
Well, he just didn't answer the question there. The question was, why were they taking pictures of security checkpoints and stairwells and hallways? Not whether you took them to see trains. And also, the wall sconce, look back at the video that I've posted on here. The guy walks up. He doesn't look up the stairs to see even that there's a wall sconce up there. Mr. Loudermilk is not near him to go, oh yeah, up these stairs is a cool wall sconce. Seriously, a wall sconce? And as you can see, it's not the big deal that Mr. Loudermilk made it out to be. You can't even really see it from that man's vantage point at the bottom of the stairs. It just looks like a light. And so the way that guy stepped up there, he didn't look up those stairs to see if there was anything interesting he could photograph. That camera was going up as soon as he stepped out from behind that hallway that he was walking down and that wall that was in the way of those stairs. His camera went right up as soon as he rounded that little wall that was there. So I call bull. So somehow this all ties in together. We know that Trump wanted to use the Justice Department to help him overturn the presidential election. We know now that Trump knew he lost. So did all of his hand-picked officials. According to notes taken by DOJ official Richard Donahue, after Attorney General Bill Barr had finally had enough, he peeled out of there so fast, all you could see was his dust, taking the threads of what was left of his ethics. And then the president called up newly installed acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and told him, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the R congressman. What he meant was the Freedom Caucus and those who align with it. It may be one of my next videos. And people like Barry Loudermilk. He was a Freedom Caucus guy a couple years ago. They say he quietly backed out, stopped paying his dues. I don't know. I don't know what's happened since then, because they're very secretive. But Loudermilk is the guy who tried to completely whitewash the events of January 6th. And he welcomes the Great Orange Goofus into the party ahead of his likely 2024 presidential run. A significant section of the crowd that stormed the Capitol on January 6th did so to stop Congress from confirming that Donald Trump had lost and Joe Biden had won the 2020 election, and Trump would soon have to leave office. Again, an election that Trump and all of the people who helped him knew he had lost. And all of these people, these followers, they were yelling that Trump had called them there. Many who were arrested said explicitly that they acted at Trump's urging. Trump and people like Loudermilk repeated the lies. And then those followers mimicked them. The lies that Trump and his followers had been spreading for months about how the election had been stolen from him, even though they all knew he lost the election. Trump asked them, he implored them to come to Washington for January 6th, promising it would be wild. And he gave a speech that day begging them to march down to the Capitol. He watched his mob smash windows, beat down police officer with fists and American flags and fire extinguishers, anything they could grab, spray bear mace on them. This great group of patriots shit and pissed in our historic Capitol halls. He told them to fight like hell and told them if they failed to prevent the election certification, they were not going to have a country anymore. He put a bullseye on Mike Pence, and they built a noose to hang him with. And we just learned recently how close Mike Pence came to being harmed, because members of Trump's militias informed investigators that if they found Mike Pence, they were going to kill him. And yet Loudermilk said about Trump, he didn't have anything to do with January 6th. I think it's a far-fetched idea. Far-fetched. He called it a far-fetched idea. Gee, I wonder if that could be another big old fat lie. Loudermilk knew Trump lost. He didn't care. Trumppublicans are in a race to the bottom. There's nothing they won't say or do in this grab for power. And if people like Barry Loudermilk get what they want, imagine what that world would look like. No ethics, no morals. Power and those who have it. We all need to vote like our way of life depends on it, people. I'm not even kidding. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you spending the time with me. If no one has told you today that you're important and you matter, you are and you do so very much. I hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you again so much. Like and subscribe. I would love to have you join me.